Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nikki Estes, and I'm the Director of Presenting and Touring at South Arts. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you will enjoy today's conversation. Also, we hope that it will provide some strategies for how we can better support artists and their work. I manage several grant programs at South Arts, and we know that funding is extremely important to the arts community. However, there are times when more meaningful support is needed. Because of the generous support of the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, South Arts is able to provide more thoughtful and holistic support to dance companies such as Dimensions Dance Theater of Miami. But first, let me just share a little bit more about South Arts. South Arts is a regional arts organization, and our mission is advancing Southern vitality through the arts. We provide programs and services in 9 states, including Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, the Carolinas, and Tennessee. We also have national initiatives that reach beyond these 9 states. One of our strategic goals, which is very relevant to today's conversation, is to support the artistic and professional growth and success of artists in the South. This means assisting Southern artists so that they can live and thrive in our region. Today, you will learn more about Momentum, which is a dance touring initiative for Southern dance companies. This initiative was created to address the clear absence of Southern touring engagements within our region. The goals of the initiative are to support touring capacity, access to resources and opportunities, and awareness and recognition both within our region and beyond. We are very proud to be working with 5 modern dance and contemporary ballet companies based in the South. These companies include Dimensions Dance Theater of Miami, Helen Semino Dance from North Carolina, New Dialect in Nashville, Stave Dance in Atlanta, Georgia, and Weidman Davis Dance in Columbia, South Carolina. Throughout this 3-year initiative, there have been ongoing webinars, professional development, mentoring, peer conversations, and financial support. As part of the program, the companies will travel to Southern communities for performances and community engagement activities. Also, the companies will partner with a presenter to prep their work for these upcoming performances, which brings us to today's conversation. The tour prep residencies are an opportunity for artists to have the time, space, and access to presenters in their communities. Artists spend several days at a presenter's venue to prep their work for sharing or touring. The tour prep residency also offers the opportunity to engage the local community and explore ideas and questions with the presenter. One of the tour prep residencies was recently completed between Dimensions Dance Theater and Palm Beach State College Theater. To learn more about this residency and the outcomes, I'm going to hand things over to Andrea Snyder, who serves as the program advisor. Andrea is co-founder and co-director of American Dance Abroad. In the past, she has served as Dance USA's president and executive director, was the assistant director of the National Endowment for the Arts dance program, and has served many other roles in the dance field. Thank you, Andrea.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Nikki, and welcome everybody. I'd like to introduce our guest speakers who will join me in this conversation. Jennifer Cronenberg is the co-founding artistic director of Dimensions Dance Theater of Miami, which was launched in 2016 as a contemporary ballet company. And Mark Alexander is the executive director of the 4 Palm Beach State College theaters, including the Duncan Theater located in Lake Worth. So we're going to have a series of questions and answers among the 3 of us. And there will be time for, or there'll be the opportunity for anyone who has a question to put it into the Q&A, and Nikki's going to field the chat box and make sure we get those questions answered towards the end of our dialogue. So without further ado, I'd like to just jump in with the 2 of you and sort of set the stage by finding out a little bit how you 2 found each other and launched your tour prep residency together. Jennifer?
Hi, sure. Mark and I knew of each other, I think, before we actually met each other, being that he's not that far away. He's just about an hour and a half further north from Miami. And we have several colleagues in common, several friends in common. And I had been there, and Carlos had been there to perform at the Duncan Theater. And then our company, Dimensions, performed at the Duncan as part of, Mark, you have to remind me of the name of the festival, but Donna Murray put together a festival of different companies, contemporary dance companies, and we were part of that. So I think that's the first time that we actually met Mark in person. But yeah, we had known of the Duncan and had the Duncan on our radar as some place that we would love to dance for quite a few years.
And Mark, what sort of opened up the door for you to invite Jennifer and Dimensions Dance Theater to be part of this tour prep residency idea?
That initiative certainly came from South Arts and my relationship with Nikki, and Nikki's knowledge of what the Duncan Theater has done for dance and with dance throughout our 35-year history of being open here at the Duncan Theater. And the program that Jennifer referenced, the Create Dance Florida program that was created by the Dancer Space and the Duncan Theater 7 years ago. We had 5 years of highlighting and focusing on local, meaning the state of Florida, dance companies to showcase what all the talent we have in the state in regards to modern dance and ballet. And so it was a festival, and thankfully Dimensions got to participate one of those years, and we got to see them live and in person. Our audience, of course, had a terrific reaction to their work. And so when this idea of the Momentum residency came forward, it was a no-brainer. And actually Jennifer and I had spoken 2 years earlier about actually adding Dimensions to our dance series in 2021, I guess it was. And that, of course, that season was canceled due to COVID. So we had plans to work together for a number of years now.
Good, good. So the tour prep residency happened recently. And could you describe what you accomplished through the tour prep residency? Jennifer, what did it do for the company?
Oh, it was fantastic for us. More than just a technical residency, what was so fantastic for me, especially, and for Carlos, my husband, as directors, was to have access to Mark, really, and his expertise, and learn really firsthand what a presenter is looking for or needs from a company, in terms of not only budgeting, but technical writers, all these different community outreach ideas, just kind of to get to sit down and pick his brain. We're really fortunate to get to do that on a regular basis at our home venue, South Miami-Dade Cultural Arts Center with Eric Fliss. So this was an exceptional opportunity for us to get to do it with somebody else, and speak about it in terms of a different community, not our own home community.
And Mark, did you intend for anything particular to be accomplished for the company or for you as the presenter of a contemporary ballet company in your community?
Yes, when we first were approached and agreed to be part of the program, it was pre-COVID. So actually the initiative and the whole mission behind what South Arts was trying to accomplish with this program shifted, as you can imagine, because of the implications of COVID. So it did evolve into more of a, create a work residency, which was a little bit different than the original intent of the program. So when I was presented with the opportunity, I really looked at what I could offer, what we can offer as a theater, as institution that values modern dance. And I really wanted to help whatever company came into the mix. It happened to be Dimensions, understand all the challenges there are in touring. And touring can become a really powerful part of your business plan for a company. And if you do it successfully and do it right, within your budget and within all the other parameters that are important to be successful, it could really lead to great success and great growth in the future. So I wanted to make sure that I was honest, that I was really sat down and looked ahead of time about budget issues and about what the requirements were for the pieces or the time they were in our theater, because I felt like if I could help them understand from the presenter side the challenges that presenters have when anybody comes into the building, whether it's a concert, whether it's a lecturer, whether it's a rentor, but especially a dance company that has so many different aspects to what they need, whether it's lighting and music and the space, and the spaces are different. If you're going on tour, you'll be in one theater on a Thursday, you'll be in another on a Saturday. The spaces are totally different. So I wanted them to really understand and experience that. And the company has the home base in South Florida, Miami-Dade Cultural Arts Center, but our space is different. And I thought it was a real great opportunity for them to really get into the nuts and bolts and the experience of it. And there were some, very difficult conversations along the way before they arrived, which was part of the process to say, financially, we just can't do that. And I don't think many other presenters will be able to do that either. So can we rethink this? Can we talk about this a little differently so that we can come up with a successful equation formula for you to move forward?
That's great to know. Can either of you be a little bit more specific? I know this was a 5-day residency or just a 1-week residency. And Jennifer, was it about putting a new work into the company? Was it about refining on already existing work or a program? And for both of you, what shifted in terms of your expectations and then your outcomes?
Well, we started off with a really over-ambitious, I think, plan to put together a whole program that could essentially or potentially be toured. That said, within a 5-day residency, which was what it was originally supposed to be, we were overreaching a little bit, and especially in terms of finances and hours and all of that. And so Mark, like he said, was very honest and very straightforward. And so we rethought a little bit, and we were very flexible, and we shifted what our ultimate goals were going to be. And our priority really became to get this one new work called Deco really set in terms of the technical needs and how it would be different for touring than if we did it in our home theater. That was really important to us. And so we just focused on that one piece. And even that presented some financial challenges. And so we took the residency down from 5 days to 4 days to try and save some money on the back end and crew hours and all of that, to make it something that both the company and the Duncan could really realistically get through and not lose anything. And so, yeah, we had, with that shift of focus, I think we had a really productive and really successful run of things. And we actually learned a lot about the work itself and how maybe not intuitively tourable it was becoming. And so we kind of figured out where we would need to trim down and tailor it a little bit more specifically to touring needs, and being accessible to different theaters and different venues with varying, offerings. So it was really an incredible learning experience.
Sounds like it was. So is the work now, do you think, able to tour to different theaters?
I do think it is much more tourable than it was going to be had we not done this residency. And I think we've all become a little bit more flexible in our ideas of how things can shift. Because, you're dealing with choreographers and artists and all of this, that they envision their work looking a certain way, and you want to provide that to the fullest capacity you can. But sometimes compromises need to be made, and those compromises are okay at the end of the day. You get maybe what we see as a watered down version, but to those who haven't seen the work, it's still stunning. And so I think we've opened our eyes a little bit to what the potential capacity for the work is beyond what the original picture was, if that makes sense.
Mark, do you have anything to add in terms of what you offered to the company and what your expectations were and how they might have shifted?
Yeah, I would like to put a little context on kind of how my approach to this was, because we at the theater, you know, our modern dance series is the hallmark of our season every year. It's what we're known for in the community. It's what we strive to do the best at. So we bend over backwards for our dance companies, and we do everything we can, and we stretch the budget as much as we can. But for this particular residency, I really believe it would best be served, and dimensions would best be served if I became a generic presenter. And I stepped outside of being the Duncan Theater director and what we do for modern dance, and, you know, present them with challenges that they would face if they didn't come to the Duncan Theater. Because everyone doesn't approach work the same. All presenters are different. They have different limitations. So I really, you know, stepped out of how we typically would have conversations in some regards with dance companies to how they might go in general if you're trying to put together a tour. So that's
I hear roadblocks in there, like you started to sort of think like a different presenter and faced them with you presented them with some obstacles that they might have someplace else that they wouldn't necessarily have at the Duncan.
Yes.
Is that true? Yeah. Okay.
I felt like that was my role, to really, you know, challenge them to be ready to go on the road, and going on the road is hard, as you all know.
That's, from my perspective, that was invaluable in hindsight. Maybe a little bit frustrating while we were going through it, but in hindsight, I look back and I think, wow, that was probably the biggest gift that Mark could have given us, to play that devil's advocate kind of role. Because in our 5 years, we've been really spoiled. We've been very spoiled in working with presenters who will bend over backwards, but we're very much aware that that's not the real world. In terms of everyone else out there and where we might go. And so we need to be ready for that. And there were things that we hadn't thought about, and differences in the ways that we present our work and propose our work to presenters to make it seem and feel more flexible from the get-go, so that there's not this preventative or preclusive barrier there that when they look at it, they say, oh no, we can't present you because this is too much for us. We want them to see that, okay, well, this is the ideal, but we are flexible and we can shift according to what is reasonable for both of us.
Sounds good. Sounds like you've learned an enormous amount. And Mark, you played the devil's advocate in the most positive way, I think. What advice would you give to other companies, or I say artist companies, both words apply, or presenters when working together? Now that you've both had this experience, what advice would you give to others?
I'll go first, Jen. One thing that I would say is, you know, especially for dance companies looking to tour, hopefully you're on the Zoom today with us and enjoying this conversation, some of you, is that you really supply the presenter with all your technical needs during the negotiating process. I mean, that's really the time when you need to talk about what works you're planning on touring, and having a up-to-date tech writer so that we can really look at what you need. And again, have this very honest dialogue about, okay, yeah, if you want to present piece A, B, and C as part of your full evening of work, we can make A and B happen really easily and quickly. We're equipped to do that. You know, piece C, I'm not sure. Is there anything else you can offer? I mean, that all has to happen during the negotiation process. You can't say, yeah, we're going to present, you know, modern dance company X, Y, and Z, and then sign a contract with the writer, and then 2 months later find out the program is something totally different, and it just won't work. And then everyone is frustrated and everyone is struggling to make something happen. So all those conversations really need to happen during the negotiation of actually being on your season. And I think that would benefit everyone. A lot of companies still to this day, have been doing this for 30 plus years, don't have riders, current riders available when you're sitting down and they're calling you and saying, we want to come to be on your season. And they don't have a current rider to share with us. It makes it next to impossible to make a knowledgeable, thorough decision.
And Jennifer, from your point of view, for others who are attempting to work with presenters?
Yeah, sure. I definitely underscore what Mark has said. And from the company standpoint, I think just really open communication from the get-go is so important. Being flexible is so important. And not only putting forth in a rider what your needs are, but also where you're willing to compromise. And then have that conversation once you decide, okay, these items are non-negotiable. We absolutely have to have these things in order to present our work with the integrity that it deserves. Whose responsibility is it going to be for X? Whose responsibility is it going to be for Y and Z? So that's all really, really clear from the beginning, well before you get into the theater or any of that starts.
How much interaction, Mark, did you have with the company while they were in the house? And or was your staff available for them to talk about other elements related to presenting this company?
Yes, actually the interaction happened way before they arrived, obviously.
Yeah.
My tech director was in constant contact with their creative team probably 60 days out. And I have to give kudos and props to their creative team because they were on the ball and they were ahead of us a number of times about, wanting to talk about X, Y, and Z and be ready to, kind of iron it all out. And, they brought us along timeline wise. We were getting ready to launch our season. So there was craziness going on here, as will be in every building. But the creative team, the tech staff and the lighting and sound people were, definitely ready to go to talk to us. So our tech team, those conversations happened. That's where we discovered a number of these, issues that might have been obstacles that we turned around into, as Jennifer said, a discussion, a compromise, who's going to do this, who's going to do that, and, worked out to be a very beautiful experience once the company arrived. You have to have all those conversations before. So when they were actually here for that week, yes, I was involved in, meeting with Jennifer, meeting with Carlos, talking about different administrative issues. I left all the tech to the people that are experts. Our tech teams did all that work together. And then I brought in Donna Murray, who Jennifer knows, who does a lot of our outreach for us in the community to talk about outreach programs and how things that we've done successfully with dance companies and share some of that experience with them, because I know that was something that Jennifer and Carlos are very interested in building for their company.
And Jennifer, you had access to all the people that you needed to talk with during the time of the residency, and it worked out well?
Yes, they were all wonderful. They were at our disposal the full 4 days that we were there, and they were really wonderful, really, really wonderful, very generous, ready to answer any questions that we had, just ready really to provide anything that we needed, and share whatever insight that they could in terms of developing the work technically from their point of view. So yeah, it was fantastic.
Well, I know it's not typical that you get a chance, either of you get a chance to spend time, that kind of time in a community. Mark, rare that you can get a company to come in for a residency and let them work in the theater. And Jennifer, clearly, a tour prep residency doesn't happen all the time. What are the takeaways from both sides about how this can work, or what can work best for companies and presenters going forward? hopefully post-pandemic. I mean, we haven't talked about the pandemic at all. Let's just say it's been there and you've worked around it, thankfully. But what about going forward? How has this tour prep residency perhaps given you some new insight into how to, Mark, from your point of view, work with the company, get a company ready to come in and present their work, and Jennifer, for you to be prepared to work with the presenter? Either one of you can go first.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay. I would say my greatest takeaway is really the importance, or understanding, having a better understanding of the importance of approaching the engagement, whether it's a residency, whether it's a short weekend of performances, but really approaching it as a partnership with the presenter, a partnership with the community that you're going in to serve, and not just, here I am to do my thing and, see you later and hopefully see you again next year, but really work together in a collaborative way. Really take the time to try and understand each other and understand the community that you're going in to serve, and why things maybe are a certain way that may be different from what you're used to in your home community. And so that was probably my biggest takeaway, to just how the approach goes beyond the cut and dry, the dollars and cents, but it's really about this connection that you're building and this relationship that you're building that will hopefully last and go on for future engagements that become stronger and stronger. You build from the first and learn a lot from the first, and then go back and it's better.
and have a longer lasting relationship with the presenter over time and the community, right, for sure. Right. Mark, from your perspective, going forward?
That in-depth conversation that, took place prior to the company getting here and then being here for that week. One of the things that I did learn was, how interested they are in expanding their outreach. And sometimes in our haste to kind of put our seasons together as presenters, we don't always explore all those aspects of, what's possible, what services are possible with companies. Sometimes you're just happy to get somebody booked, and while we got them, that's great, and we're going to have 2 performances and we'll be done with it. So now, it just kind of re-energized me, especially during the pandemic, because I know we're trying to evade pandemic talk as much as we can, but it does influence even how we approach our work today. It's kind of, because we can't do a lot of outreach right now with the pandemic. It's just not safe, and people aren't open to it. So it just really re-energized me. They were only here in November of 2021, so it's not that long ago that Dimensions was here doing this. Is that, yes, let's explore this whole idea of the impact the company can have on the community when we're talking about booking them. What's possible? What are they comfortable with? How do they do their approach their outreach? How can they interact with, our subscribers in such a way to really just reinforce this whole idea that modern dance is an integral part of our lives, not just an entertainment source. So it really has, reawakened my desire to explore all those extra things, which I have in differing degrees with, looking forward to the new season. So as a presenter, that's the kind of spark that Jennifer and Carlos kind of reignited for me.
Wow, it must have been a really wonderful, absolutely wonderful experience for both sides of the coin here. And yes, I agree that we are in the pandemic and it's not going away, but it would be nice to think about post-pandemic and how to work in the future, and what you've learned from this, that because of the good part of the pandemic, what you've learned from this that can be moved forward. Nikki, do you have a question or two, or do either of you have a question for each other, or something you'd like to tell the audience who's ever listening? The floor is a little bit open right now.
I'll jump in, sure. So we know that this type of work takes a lot of time to plan, a lot of resources, a lot of coordinating. And I think you've already spoken to this a bit, but if there's something else that you want to add, I'd love to hear it. Like, why do it? Why take the time to visit a community, Jennifer, when it's taking time away from you to do your work? And the same for Mark. Why work with a company when you have so much on your plate as well? Why do this? What's the benefit of it? If you haven't already stated it, what words of encouragement can you give to your peers about this type of work that is really, apparently seems to be really meaningful to the both of you in different ways?
Jennifer?
I think it goes, I go back to my days of training and, my teacher never accepting anything less than 150% all of the time, because if you weren't giving 150%, you were just wasting time. And there was always this ultimate goal and this ultimate thing that you were striving for that was almost unattainable, but you knew it was there. And that kind of kept you going all the time. And I take that really into what I do now. And yes, there isn't a lot of time. And yes, you can see it as an extra, or you can see it as a burden, or whatever you want to see it as. But at the end of the day, our ultimate goal as directors is not only to service our dancers and our artists in the best way that we can, and service our own in the best way that we can, but to really have an impact on the other communities that we serve. And the best way to do that is to understand them. And so these visits and these conversations are essential and incredibly important to realizing that ultimate goal in the best way that we can. So yes, for me, that's what makes it worth it, to really keep that in mind as I move forward. And for other companies, I think I would say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to have the conversation. Sometimes as dancers, that's not what we do best, verbally, but do it. Open yourselves up, ask questions, be honest about what's frightening about it, what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so really put it out there, because you'd be surprised how many others are willing to help and willing to share, which is a beautiful thing for the art form, I think.
Mark, you have some thoughts, and there's also a Q&A question that's out there.
Yes, for me, I think the most amazing part was that little, very fractional contribution we had to this creation of a new work, because we had nothing to do with creating new work, but the work was created in our space in many, many ways. It was refined in our space, and to be around that whole, excitement and the beauty, and it's an amazing piece. So I say to anyone who's online, check it out, because it is an amazing, Deco is an amazing piece of dance work. And so as presenters, by definition, we just, put things on our stage that are already together and packaged and ready to go. So for me, this residency and working like this with a company afforded us the opportunity to be a little bit part of that creative process, which I think all of us who are in the arts thrive that as much as we can. So that really kind of was the best part for me and for my staff as well, because they don't get to do that very often. It comes in, we have a light plot that's already hung 2 days before the company gets here, and things are in place, and none of that really happened. We had a light plot hung, but it changed as they got here, and it changed again day 2 when they were here. And so, I mean, that's really kind of the nuts and bolts of why we all got into this, isn't it? So as a presenter, you don't get that chance that often. So this gives us a chance. Yeah.
It's the icing on the cake. Yeah. Nikki, there are a couple of questions you want to see. What are we going to do with that? Where do you want to go?
I'll read them, and I want to encourage anyone else joining us today. If you have a question, please do pop it into the Q&A box. So we have 2 questions right now. The first one is for people who haven't done this before. What are the typical or average costs involved with a tech residency? More that was said. I'm assuming that the theater provides the venue and labor for the dance company. Does the presenter also need to cover the hotel rooms, meals, the artist fee? What were the other expenses involved? And I will maybe start out with some context. So for South Arts, we provided funding to support this tech residency. We offered funding to the presenter and funding to the artist to cover some of their expenses. And so every residency is different, and the presenter covers different expenses as part of the negotiation process. So Jennifer or Mark, if you want to jump in about what the real costs were, it'd be helpful for me to hear as well.
Well, the biggest cost for the presenter is the labor that's involved. With any, dance company, there is the bulk of your expenses come from labor because you have the load in, the pre-hang, you have the rehearsal time, then you have the show times and such. Mm-hmm. So the human labor is the biggest expense. To do a residency, it really depends on the presenter's calendar. Some presenters, giving up a day to not book something else that could come in and make the money is opportunity cost that's, taken because it's an opportunity lost. So it all depends on how what your mission is as a theater. If having those 5 days set aside to do a residency like this is important to your mission, community-based and such, then that's a really terrific thing. But some presenters will look at it as, tying up 5 days just to work on work. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be open to that. And they're going to say, this is costing me money because I can't, present a tribute band or something. So that's opportunity lost there, because there is no rental per se that comes with doing an event like this. It's there's no revenue, period. And even if we did a sort of demonstration to the public, it's not something that I as a presenter would charge for. It's not something that's, some people might think of it that way, but I wouldn't. So the cost of human cost, and there was some rental equipment that again was negotiated, as Nikki said. That's all part of the negotiation process, that we decided to take on the expense of some lighting equipment that was needed for this particular week. So the Duncan agreed to rent that equipment. As far as hotel, the company is based in Miami. So many of the personnel drove back and forth. It's not far, like Jennifer said earlier, but some of the tech crew that we hear all the time decided to stay up in the area so they wouldn't have to do that commute. And then, that was an expense on the company.
Thank you for that, explaining that. Another question? See, Eric has written a question in there.
Sure. Before we move on, Jennifer, did you want to add anything about the expenses or cost?
No, just that, yes, we took on the expense of the dancers and artists' travel, the hotel costs for the crew members that stayed for those days so that they would have early access to the theater. We took care of our artist salaries, all of that. And I think because this was a new work that we were trying to develop, there were some additional costs that came into it in terms of choreographer's time, lighting design time, things that if you're working on a piece that's already in your rep, you've already spent that money, but this was a new piece that we were bringing into the reps. So we had those additional costs as well.
Jennifer, who is the choreographer of Deco, by the way?
Kevin Jenkins.
Good, thank you. Yeah.
Well, that's a great segue into my next question. The next question is, since this residency was handling a world premiere piece and that no history or previous performance was available for reference, would you have a suggestion if the technical residency is the right place to explore this work for touring?
Did you understand the question?
Yeah, I do. I think
Be reading it myself.
The end result, I think, is a beautiful piece of work, and it wasn't all done during the residency. There was a lot of work that went to in advance of this and coming here for the 4 days. I don't know. It's hard to say if it's a reasonable approach to creating new work. You certainly need a lot more time than a week to create a new piece, if I'm understanding the question correctly. But it's certainly a great opportunity to refine the work and maybe get it to where you need it to be for your premiere venue and touring.
Jennifer, anything to add?
I guess for us, it was, we kind of saw it as two birds with one stone. We did approach it really with the priority of the technical, really getting it to the technical point that it would be ready for any stage, rather than just focusing on the touring. But there was so much that we learned in that process that it was two birds, one stone, really. Like we were figuring out, you know, that this is not going to work if we want to bring it on tour at, you know, A, B, and C, but maybe this will work in our home theater, but it might not work somewhere else. You know, all of those things were things that came to the table while we were doing the technical aspects of it.
So there was an advantage to taking a new work that had not yet been premiered and setting it in for 4 days and working on it so that you have it to you got it to a point where you know what you can do with it.
I believe so. I believe so. And we didn't have all the answers when we left at the end of the residency, but we surely had a much better understanding and much better outline for it. So
Good.
Okay, next question. This is for you, Jennifer. The Atlanta Black Theater Festival opens each year and receives close to 100 submissions from all over the world. We struggle to attract dance theater companies. Really interested to know if dance companies consider theater festivals for viable performance opportunities. What are your thoughts or suggestions for advice?
I don't see why not. I mean, we're very open to many different ways to present and opportunities to present and audiences to present to. So I think a conversation would really be necessary to figure out how we could best serve that circumstance, what in our repertoire would work best for a situation, a theater situation. But we're open to all of it. For sure.
I think that many dance companies would really enjoy the opportunity to be part of a theater festival, and physical movement and theater arts in many ways go hand in hand. So I think that there's great potential there. I mean, we, among the Momentum group of 5 companies, we've talked about a lot about alternative places, alternative ways to think about putting dance into community, whether it's through parks and recreation, or it's through other kinds of festivals, alternative festivals, working in visual arts, working in museums and galleries and all kinds of places other than just a typical theatrical theater setting venue. So it goes without saying, I think that most of the companies would appreciate the opportunity to have a dialogue about a theater festival, bringing them in. Nikki, do you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've, you know, heard both from Jennifer and Mark about what they learned from the residency, why they wanted to do it. And, you know, that is one of the reasons why we offer a professional development grant for presenters in our region to support artist planning visits. So while we can't offer the same support that we offered Mark and Jennifer, but what we do have is a grant program that supports planning visits between artists and presenters. And the idea is that you bring the artist to your community. The artist can share more about their work, their capacity. The presenter shares more about their community, their capacity. You learn from each other. You see the space. You can maybe address technical issues at that moment. You may talk with partners in the community, get to know the community better. And then based on that exchange, design the residency that is best for the community and best for the artist. So our professional development grant offers up to $1,000 to support the travel expenses for an artist to come to a community. It doesn't support a technical residency, but it certainly begins the conversation about what's possible to what's possible once artists get into communities, and it makes the community residency activities more meaningful. And what we've learned through our work with the Dance Touring Initiative presenters is that, yes, this does create more work, it does take time, but in the end, the engagement is more meaningful for both the artist and the presenter, and really the community.
I just want to suggest something to Tony Henson, who asked a question about the Atlanta Black Theater Festival and Dance Company. Is, collaboration is always, top of my mind, how you can collaborate with people. So maybe reaching out to Dance USA or other, national dance association organizations to get the word out about your festival, that you welcome dance companies to be a part of it, would, maybe kind of, raise awareness about you're open to that. Because dance companies might disqualify themselves thinking that's not a place for me. So we don't want anybody to disqualify themselves from anything, right? So, maybe reach out to organizations like that. Just try to spread the word that you are very much open for your festival to include dance companies. We had Cleo Parker Robinson dance here this weekend as part of our series, and we had a number of our patrons during intermission say, it's so nice to see dance theater for a change. Like the second piece was very much dance theater, because it just mixes everything up. And I'm like, oh, there you go. So Tony, yes, definitely are companies out there that would fit that bill.
Absolutely. How are we doing on time? Are we sort of
might
there?
have almost. I think we might have time for one more question. So if you want to put it in the Q&A box, and then we'll wrap up. But maybe in the meantime, going back to Andrea's question for you two, is there anything that you want to ask of each other?
Jennifer, anything you want to ask Mark?
I'll go.
When are you coming back?
So now that you kind of know that Deco can fit into the Duncan Theater space, any ideas about working together on making Deco happen?
I would love that. We're ready.
Terrific. Well, let's start negotiations.
This is the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Jennifer, anything that on your mind that you want to share? Make sure you've gotten out about the experience of doing the tour presidency. We've got it all.
We were really grateful, for everything that Mark and the crew at the Duncan offered to us. And we're ecstatic about the prospect of going back for an actual performance. We were so sad when it couldn't happen in 2021. And I know his 2022 season is jam-packed. And so we're hopeful that in 2023, we could do something together. But I think it's the start of something really wonderful. So we're super appreciative of everything that we took away from it.
Great. Well,
I think I'd also like to give, again, credit to South Arts for, making this kind of opportunity available, because it's not something that you could necessarily do with your own budget. The funding certainly helps. It gets you talking about, the possibility, if you kind of take away that financial barrier, that now you're open to working in this way with another company and for the better good of our industry, and I think anytime we're reminded that all these relationships are partnerships, nobody's in this alone, no one's doing it on their own, that we need to approach all this work as a partnership. And that's what that's what this grant actually was about, or this opportunity was about creating partnerships and strengthening partnerships. So not only do we get to strengthen it with Dimensions, but again, South Arts came to the table with a great opportunity and a great idea, and it's going to have long-term positive effects on dance and on our industry in the South for sure. So thank you.
Beautifully
Thank
said.
you, Mark.
Beautifully said.
We this is a pilot program, and we've learned a lot. We have a lot more to learn. So we thank you for joining us kind of in this journey. And yes, we very much are aware that this work takes partnership and collaboration across the board. So thank you both for all that you've done.
Yes, thank you. Greatly appreciated that we had this time to talk and share and enlighten those who are listening. And we hope there's a great future for Momentum and for you all and for dance. Absolutely.
Well, thank
Okay.
you. And I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of things I want to make sure everyone's aware of. Thank you, Jennifer, Mark, and Andrea. Also, thanks to all those that were able to join us today. I hope that you found the conversation worthwhile, that today's conversation offered something new, whether it was learning about a dance company you may not know much about, or an organization and how organizations can support artists beyond the stage. I do want to mention that we do offer grant programs to Southern presenters that support these types of partnerships, including our presentation grant. This grant program offers up to $9,500, $9,500 to engage a modern dance company or contemporary ballet company based in the South. The next deadline is fast approaching, is March 1st. And I've already mentioned our professional development grant program, which offers up to $1,000 to support planning visits with artists. We accept applications year round. So if you want to learn more about these grant programs, you want to learn more about Dimensions Dance Theater, or any of the Momentum Dance companies, please visit our website at southarts.org. Also, please know that this recording will be available on our website maybe sometime next week. And thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.